You cannot solve hardcore violence with just counseling and social intervention. In fact, in many cases, because of the nature of social intervention, the criminals benefit.
What are some of the worrying trends that you've observed based on, of course, your access to that kind of information as portfolio?
Number one, they, they reorganize themselves to, as the police organize, but as a critical, the emergence of cybercrime is what we have to monitor carefully. So money is being brought in terms of literal virtual money. And those financial crimes, including cybercrime, I think will be the worrying trend because that is what provides the foundation which the criminals build, right? And we the the capacity to fight them is still evolving. They fight the MOCA are good organized, but they need more resource, and our legislation also had to be looked at because once you begin to get into personal wealth, you have to look at the constitutional protection individuals have.
As you touch on personal wealth, have we utilized POCA enough?
It has been used, but we can use it more, and we also need some further amendments to it to make it more effective. Not only the FNI for the lawyers, but other areas we need to tackle because there are a lot of creative ways to deal with what we see without going into detail how money is laundered, right? So there are a number of other institutions which we have to bring and activities bring under the POCA Act. But it's being used. It's maybe I've been saying, and I said like that to the security force, we sometimes need to give greater publicity to the successes we have because of the level of homicide and the attention paid to it. The country sometimes feel browbeaten by criminal activity, and they have had some good successes recently. And even in this field, I mean, they just come to the case. I think they might have forfeited over $1 billion. I've had maybe a huge bank of real estate in Montego Bay, high quality real estate that is now in the possession of the government. So they've had some good successes, and they maybe need to be made better known to the public.
So when it comes into the position of the government, we sell these properties and
You can once you've forfeited them. Yes, I think they. Don't let me mislead you, but I know some of the money goes into the elements of security. But the government, they become the government, and I wouldn't say exactly how it goes. It's something I've followed that side. I try to get them to forfeit, and then But you run into some challenge because sometimes if the previous owners are known, there are people who don't want to acquire them, and you have to find alternative use. So it can be a challenge with property, but there's cash and other and assets which are saleable. And usually they have advertised some. I've seen the government once they have settled at the court case, you advertise them.
so are we
And
having
real estate is
selling some of the real estate? Is that
you'll have some challenges if a person know that the gangster want the property, know how to buy it, right? With the emergence of BNB and so forth, I think you'll find this could change because people are buying real estate now and using them in this element of visitor. So it's there, but they're put up for sale. I've seen some advertised. Right?
Would you say
It comes with FID primarily, and they've been pretty active.
would you say we have more of the properties on our hands that we've successfully had forfeited through the courts than we've been able to dispose of? Would you?
I'd say we have more, but bear in mind, I think the effectiveness has just been, in the last 2 years in particular, it has improved. So we have acquired property recently, and those will take a little time. So we'll have to see how it emerges over the next few months. And as I said, with the emergence of that kind of visitor where people buy property for real estate and they will buy it, and then because time heals some of the wounds as well as its use as a visitor center. Different. So I think
would
we,
have
we
a
just
lot of
out.
value
Eh?
in mind as to how much real estate we have on our hands that we've not been able to
No,
dispose of.
No, well, we still have well over $1 billion worth of real estate. How fast I said the process of selling them would have been on the starting for some of them. So it will take a little while. I think as we go along, we'll begin to see more. You'll notice the ads themselves. But when they advertise to the Ministry of National, from Ministry of Finance. So it's either that we're still not very aggressive on seizing property for income tax. So it's most like some forfeited property. I think it'll begin to come to notice. The law said it's just beginning to be exercised with the kind of efficiency and energy that we'd like. So I'm not unduly worried. In fact, I want to see more of it done because money underpins the increase, well, the acquisition of huge amount of resources easily underpins the problem we face in crime. They buy guns, give people to protect their property. They kill people. If we can disrupt that flow, people will hold on.
There are those who believe the Horace administration has been given to what they may describe as an overreliance on the use of states of public emergency. I know it's a question you have addressed
Yeah.
a number of times, but in terms of those who are saying no, don't use it, but we believe you are using it too often, how would you respond to such a criticism?
No, it's not me used to. It was me used too often. I think those who are there are two set of people are critical of it. There are those who like to see easy solutions and therefore view it, and what they see is just a state of public emergency. Everything is an incident. And there are those who feel strongly that it's not the route to go at all. Both of them are wrong. As I said, crime is complex and need a number of approaches. And we saw the state of public emergency, which we amended significantly. Remember, the state of public emergency today is nothing like the state of public emergency in 1976 or 1966. I don't want to say, I'm trying to pass it. We had the first state of emergency in 1966 in West Kingston. And then we had the 76 one. State of public emergency today is not like that. In fact, the state of emergency is better related to the DRMA. It's conducted. And it was seen as an interim tool. We had too few police officers. The legislation, some of the legislation are still very not inadequate, and the police were ill-equipped. Building them out would take time, and I've been hurt by panic. But you couldn't just throw a multi-billion-dollar into a ministry which was used to spending $100 million. You had to plan as well as you had to do it in a way that you future-proof your activity. We're going to buy motor cars. We went out and got full tender, which took us nearly a year, and then decided we're going to buy a fleet of vehicles because you had a police force which had 16 brands of vehicles, inefficient. So everything pointed to reduce violence in the short term. We need extraordinary powers to somehow impair the violence producers until we build out the force to a point where we can effectively deal with them by policing on the one hand. And while we're doing that, we're also taking steps to see what we can do in the most vulnerable communities. That's where the ZOLO came in as a supplementary activity, Zones of Special Operations. And now for the full medium term, we're looking at scaling up educational activity, training, family services. This SOE is an important tool in this. When you're dealing with 48 per 100,000, it's the highest in the world. We don't have a parallel. You can't say what is done here or there. And a lot of Jamaicans don't face that. You cannot solve hardcore violence with just counseling and social intervention. In fact, in many cases, because of the nature of social intervention, the criminals benefit. You build a decent house for a single mother who lives in a area controlled by a gang, and she just lives in a shack, a tent, or some kind of cardboard zinc shack. And you train her, or you give her a grant of $50,000, buy fish and sell, she near the coast. So she begin to make an income. She have a house where it's now warm and relatively comfortable, have running water. And so the gangster says she have to pay him commission for the fish she sell, and maybe end up charging her rent to live in the house that the government give her. Because that's the nature of the community. So we have to deal with the hardcore criminals, have to find a way to separate them out of the system. And getting evidence for formal charges can be difficult. We respect our constitution, and I have said over and over, we have faced peculiar problems with a liberal democracy. And in the early discussion, you'll have overheard your colleague refer to the electoral system. We have a stronger electoral system than most democracies. And we have a longer history of democracy. Although we got jerked up with in the 70s, 80s with the internal conflict, we still had elections and changed government. Outside of Britain, no European country has that history. there are things we can take pride in, despite of our social challenges. You cannot name one European country except Switzerland and UK that has the length of pure democratic history that Jamaica has had.
You mentioned the difference between the state of public emergency 1966, 1976, and what exists now. Given the recent court rulings as well and the new regulations that have been drafted to govern the use of the state of public emergency, is it the same crime fighting tool that it was prior to those court rulings?
No.
Can we still get the job done with it?
It's still an effective tool in acute violence, immediate violence, and if we're challenging the court ruling, and out of that we hope we can get the kind of regulations required that satisfy the Constitution. But one of the issues they have said, and keep it from being too partisan, but the Charter of Rights, which has changed the framework of the state of emergency, was drafted largely by a JLP government and led by Mr. Siaga and Mr. Golding as a response to the 76 state of emergency, which is why you have so many hurdles to cross to meet the requirement of the Constitution. Kind of why we use terms very easily, but the real incentive, and I would not blame the then leader, anyway, someone I have a lot of respect for, without any apology. But there are elements of the government at the time, PNPO, that went totally awry with it. People were generally carted off in large truckloads to temporary shelters.
Against the backdrop, do you support the removal of the two-thirds majority that is required for an extension?
Right now, I'd say yes, but I would not want it to be removed blanket like that, to give blanket power. It has to be discussed and looked at in what constitutional restraints you want, because there has to be some restraint. Because what you don't want is to run off. But an elected government needs to have executive authority to deal with crises like violence.
What would that look like outside of requiring a two-thirds majority? A simple majority? Because that would remove the protection that the two-thirds majority.
I said, which is what was brought in to prevent what happened in 76. I think it can be examined in terms of, well, Parliament exists now, and I said we have a Parliament, we can have confidence in that. Some parliamentary review on a regular basis, as well as judicial review, would have to be examined. I can't give you an easy answer to that, but there must be bars and constraints that prevent a government from going wild, right? And if a government wants to go, well, of course, in an elected system and gets the support of the army and the police, they can in fact go wild. That's a different thing. But in a functioning democracy, you want some restraints on the power. But we do need extra power when you're dealing with the level of violence we have. The level of violence we have in Jamaica is a major threat to the whole society.
But is a simple majority enough to give you that needed guardrail? Is that sufficient?
The guardrails, I said, is something I want to discuss. I think right now I don't like the person, but the previous administration of leadership of the PNP took a different position, which I think was, in my view, the responsible route. They were not comfortable with the state of public emergency. And therefore, every time it came up for review, there was a detailed monitoring by the then party. And they could pull the rank on you anytime. No, they took the position that you are the elected government, you have an executive responsibility, we'll give you the one vote required to proceed, but we are watching you like a hawk. If you take the decision, we support it. The fact is, if we could get that as a convention, I think it'll work. So that if you begin to go too far over the rails, you can pull it back. You retain the rope. But it is your decision as the executive leadership of the elected leader of the country to make that decision and take the risk and execute.
So political understanding is what we need, and not necessarily.
I would call it a convention, because successful democracies all have conventions. In fact, the UK, which is the model parliament, has no constitution. It's common law and precedents. And I think as a society, we need to begin to establish that element. You will never have the American system is an expensive system, and we don't get there to be able to pass legislation overnight, to have, if, you know, there's a lot of talk of the presidential system. But if you look at the American system, it's a very deep-seated government, and you pay everywhere each other way.
What are some of
That's
the
right.
other strategies? Because we've discussed state of public emergency that form a major part
All right.
of the state stuff to reduce.
I've said over there, we walk on two legs.
Mm.
Strong policing mean if effective, having the right size security forces, have the right equipment, have the right legislation, and the right kind of intelligence, and the other supporting agencies working in sync. So MOCA, FID, border security through POCA, and custom all have to stand on the side of strong, effective, professional policing. That's all. That's really what they have for security purposes. And that network is there, but we still have to go away in funding it for us in terms of in both personnel and equipment and legislative tools. And legislation, which we don't do so, is a tough area. I've just come to the farm, and I've come back to it because we have not built into our governance system the kind of structure to get legislation through quickly and efficiently. As we get an experienced lawyer in any of the areas, they move on because we have not funded them. Even I don't the police, I've been fighting for the police, and they know me well enough, so that may be prejudice, but it may be worse than the policing. We just don't treat our lawyers that we can keep them, and those we keep, as they get to a certain competence, they go to the bench. We don't have them. But that side of security has to be, we continue to build it out. And I think we can get there reasonably well. If we didn't have a 2-year interruption, I think we'd be almost there. On the other hand, we still have to do not only practical work on the social services and the social in the communities. And there need to be not only the investment, but some decent empirical research to be done that can give you ongoing analysis to see if the service we are provided to our people is adequate.